This is going to be part 1 of my new series, What If Deku Ate the Sana Sana no Mi, aka the Sand fruit, or crocodile's fruit. This story takes us back to when Izuku was a child. Him and Bakugo would always play games, as they're best friends right now. They play pirates or they play hero. But once Bakugo got his quirk and Izuku didn't, and Izuku found out he was quirkless, everything changed. Bakugo started hanging out less and less with Izuku and started to more bully him. And this didn't help Izuku's morale, as because he was quirkless, everyone else saw themselves as better and Izuku as inferior to them. Meaning Izuku got little if to no friends to hang out with, and would just have to hang out with his mother after school or just be at his house. This leads to him having an outlook on life, and he realizes everyone's not equal. He's always going to be lesser than everyone else. He ends up having to take up hobbies after school just to have fun. He tries gardening with his mother or tries to do crocheting, but that both ends up failing. But he does go. One of his other hobbies is going to the store and helping them plant fruits in the back. One day he gets a gift from the person that works at the store. It's a fruit or it's a plant seed. He ends up growing it in his house, and after a few months it grows into a fruit. But it's weird. It looks like an apple, but it has two things sticking out, but it has pricks like a cactus. He doesn't know what fruit it is, but he ends up taking a bite, and as soon as he does, something happens. The fruit tastes horrible. It tastes rotten. He ends up swallowing it down, but ends up hating the taste of it. He ends up telling his mother about it, and she ends up finding a place and buries it in a street. After a few days, the fruit grows into just a regular tree. Izuku ends up hating it, as nothing really happens after he ate it. But one day, Bakugo ends up bullying Deku, and tries to hit him with an explosion in his face, but as soon as he does, he falls right through Izuku's body as he feels sand on top of him. Izuku's body then reconstructs itself with the sand, as he's normal. He hasn't been touched. As Izuku thinks he's just got a quirk, and this makes Izuku very happy. Bakugo is more shocked, wondering what happened, but ends up just walking back to his desk, and the day continues. Izuku ends up going home and yelling to his mother, he got a quirk, and she's happy to hear he finally can complete his dream. Izuku then gets a call by his father saying how happy he is that Izuku now has a quirk of his own. And Izuku can't wait to see what it really can do. He ends up following his mom to the pool, and he's a good swimmer. He can swim really good, but as soon as he jumps in, he starts drowning. His body can't swim, as his body is just his body, even now though it's now sand, it's slowly dissipating. He can't swim. He can't do anything. He's saved by the lifeguards, but they wonder what happened, as he says he doesn't know. As they know him, they know he can swim, but for some reason he can't. He ends up going into a small area of the pool. His knees fully get covered as he collapses into the water and starts drowning. As he gets pulled out again, Izuku thinks it could be his quirk. He's not able to be in water. Due to it being sand isn't really good with water, so he's really not able to enjoy swimming. Inko is sad about this, but says he can always just do other stuff. Izuku is saddened by the fact that he can't swim, but he says there's always other stuff he can do to have fun. Izuku then realizes he may have to do he needs to test out what his quirk can really do. As he ends up grabbing a fruit, but then his hands slowly start sucking out the moisture as it dries up into a husk of its original self. He realizes he can dry stuff out, as he grabs stuff like a cup the water and pours it onto something and sucks out the moisture through it, shriveling up the whatever he put water on. He realizes also he can shape the sand into other things, but he can't really make good things. He just makes sand shields or small little blades of sand along his arm, allowing him to cut stuff. He also realizes he can turn the ground into sand by drying it up, but he's not really good with it due to how young he is. Due to this, Bakugo ends up stop bullying him, and Bakugo tries to be friends, but something in Izuku's demeanor has changed. He seems to be less happy, but seems to be more cynical and critical. He tells Bakugo to leave him alone as they're not friends, as he says he'll be his own hero without Bakugo and does not need to follow his rules or listen to him anymore. Izuku still will talk with Bakugo's family, like Mitsuki or Bakugo's father, but he won't talk to Bakugo if he doesn't need to. We'll go on to Izuku's middle school year. This is the same part as always. Instead, when the teacher comes in the class, he says, "I was going to pass out these job applications, but I know you all want to be heroes," as everyone starts showing off their quirks, as Izuku sits in the background doing nothing. Bakugo says for all of them to shut up, as he's the only one that will make it into UA, as he calls out saying that even though Izuku may have a powerful quirk, he won't be anyone great like him, as Izuku says, "Can you shut up, please? I don't like hearing your babbling all the time." As Bakugo says, "What? Yeah, stop your babbling. I don't like hearing it." As Bakugo gets up in his face and starts shooting explosions in his hand, as Izuku summons sand from his arm, making small blades along his fingers, saying, "Don't make me hit you. I can and I will do it." As Bakugo says, "Come on, I'll do it right here, right now." The teacher says, "You two, enough. We do not need you two fighting this year. Remember what happens, Bakugo. Another fight and you're out of here. Izuku, you're on your last 2 strikes because of this. Do not let it happen. You two have a great future ahead, and I don't want it to end here." As Izuku summons his fingers back into their normal, how they normally look, as Bakugo sits back in his chair. Izuku ends up leaving the class with 2 girls. One has the ability to turn her hands into flames, and the other one has the ability to just move her hair. These are the only people he really talks with. They ask if he really wants to go to UAs. He says, "I could honestly not care. I'll try to go to UA, and if not, I'll go to some other hero school." As I say, they can't wait to see him later. Izuku ends up realizing he really does not know where to go, as he ends up thinking, well, might as well try UA. He probably could get in. He's very smart, and he believes his quirk is powerful enough to let him go there. As he does have his own fangirls in his school that like Bakugo, but a little bit more due to how he acts. He's smart, powerful, and yet very kind to people who don't make him mad, as he has fought another kid who tried spraying him down with a hose. Most of Izuku's body stayed the same except for one hand that was not hit by the hose. He turned it into sand and slammed the kid into a wall, telling him, "If you do that again, I'm gonna make sure you're shriveled up like a mummy." As the kid was scared and ran away. Izuku then thinks he should apply to UA, as he realizes he has to draw a costume. He ends up thinking that he doesn't need to be too advanced or too technical, but he says he always had a thing for pirates. He adds a golden hook into his hero outfit to go along with some sort of pirate theme. He ends up designing an outfit close to Crocodile from One Piece, but he ends up changing a few things. He doesn't have the big overcoat, it's mainly just a suit with a giant hook. He also has some pockets on the shirt, inside the shirt, and a few on his legs so he can hold stuff if he needs it, aka matches and some other stuff that could be essential. The next day, during his walk home, he ends up getting attacked by the sludge villain. The sludge villain says,
"Sorry, kid, I need your body, so give it to me now."
As the sludge villain attacks Izuku, but flies straight through him. Izuku says, you got all this gunk on me. As he ends up using his sand to absorb the moisture in the sludge villain. He absorbs some, and the sludge villain decreases about half its normal size, but not too much. Sludge villain asks,
"What are you?"
"I'm made out of sand. And if you don't notice, I don't care who you are." As he touches the ground, turning into sand and slashing at him. The sludge villain's body just reforms until it's contained within a sandball. All Might says, "No need to fear, I am here," as he sees the sludge villain contained in a thick wall of sand. As Izuku says, "Oh, you came for this one?" As he shows the sludge villain. Sludge villain gets scared, realizing he's caught, and now All Might's in here. He says,
"Wait, kid, you're not. Please, I don't want to go back there."
As All Might ends up capturing him into some jars and the sludge villain is now stuck in there. Izuku says, "Can you please sign my notebook?" As Izuku still has a thing for heroes, he still likes them, but not as much. All Might ends up putting his signature in there and ends up leaving. Izuku gets happy knowing that he got to meet his idol, All Might. He ends up leaving, walking back home. His mother asks how his day was, as he says, "Good, Ma. Mom, how's yours?" And she says, "It's been good." And Izuku asks, "So, when do you think Dad's gonna come back?" "You know his work. He's working overseas." And he says, I know. I just wish he was here more often." And she says, "I wish so too." And Izuku lays in his bed and starts thinking, what could he do? What can he do as a hero? His power is really cool, but it could be seen as villainous. Being able to destroy the road and turn it into sand, suck up moisture, turning people into mummy-like things, and being able to control sand and make sand tornadoes. He's been trying to learn that move, but all he can make are small ones that are 4 feet tall and can be a minor inconvenience. He ends up thinking he needs to get stronger with his quirk. Well, he at least thinks it's a quirk. As we know, he got it from his devil fruit. The next day, he doesn't have school. He ends up looking at a place where he could try and train secludedly, as he finds a beach full of trash that looks like it was abandoned. He ends up feeling an odd hatred of this beach, saying the beach should be clean, the sand should be showing its true beauty. As he goes to the beach the next day and starts using his sand to clean it up. Izuku is not as scrawny in this universe due to him having a quirk and standing up for himself. Izuku slowly starts thinking he probably needs to build up his strength as well. He's pretty strong for his age, but he could be stronger. So he uses some of he turns off his sand abilities and moves the trash, or most of the trash, without the use of his powers. He ends up using his powers mainly on the last day to get rid of the trash he really does not want to pick up. As All Might sees a kid cleaning up the beach and says, good kid, as he ends up leaving. Izuku does cardio to get his body into shape, but he's a lot faster when he just uses his sand to maneuver around. After he was done cleaning the beach, as it only took him at least a month, he says, I feel calm here, as he sits down, relaxing. As the 2 girls from his school end up seeing him and asking how his day is. He says he feels fine. The girl with the ability to turn her hands in the fire ends up touching him, as her heat accidentally increases and burns Izuku. But he looks at his arm as it's turned into glass. As he ends up shooting that part off and absorbing the sand on the beach to reform his arm, but he wonders, his body is sand. Heat is could also be a weakness, as he wants one of the girls to test something. As he cuts his hand, turning his hand normal, he cuts it and spews some blood on it, and then he asks her to try and put her hand on him. She does, as he turns his body to sand, and she can touch him. Izuku says he's trying to figure out how his quirk truly works, as it's mainly water, but if heat and liquids like blood and probably sweat can affect him, his quirk's going to be very hard to master. As they ask if he wants to go anywhere, like karaoke and movies, or even a place just for them, as he says, I'm not interested in any of this lovey-dovey stuff. I'm just your friend. And as they say, he don't see you as that. As he says, well, I do, and I hope you can respect me and see me as a friend like I do to you. As they say, sigh, saying he's gonna find a girl that he likes. As he says, probably not. I'm not into you chicks, or at least not right now. As he say, oh, well, you want more of us? Do you want a harem? As he says, honestly, I couldn't care. As they end up laughing, Izuku ends up just sighing and ends up drinking some water just to get his mind off of it. Izuku doesn't know what to do and starts training at the beach using sand, making sure no one's there so he doesn't get in trouble. The police do catch him a few times and tell him to stop, but Izuku does train secretly, leaving his house at night to train his devil fruit powers, or what he knows of. Also, I'm making this series mainly because I see other people make this series and they mainly give him hockey as well. I'm not doing this for that series. His powers only come from the devil fruit. No hockey's involved at all. He's never going to have hockey in the series. So if you like it, if you like that he would have hockey, you can find another series, but this one is strictly his powers. Izuku ends up, and now let's get back to the story. Izuku ends up learning some new moves. He transforms the sand into 3-foot long blades and shoots them out. He's able to turn his fingers into sand and manipulate them like an octopus. He ends up making a little bit taller sand tornadoes and makes them a little bit more dangerous. He ends up having fun. His mom ends up driving him around a cliffside edge, and she just wants to bring him around to some places around Japan. But something ends up happening. A villain attack occurs, some villain with the ability to shoot lasers from his hands. As their car derails and gets trapped under rubble on a mountain, Izuku isn't harmed, but his mother is. He ends up trying to use his sand abilities, but realizes his mother's bleeding, stopping him from moving his body. He ends up realizing one of his hands is pinned under a rock, and the only way to leave is to rip off this part of his hand. He ends up using his sand and cuts his hand off, and then uses the hand that he has left to make the rocks into sand, controlling it as he sees some pros, the Pussycats, as they ask if he's okay, but they see him bleeding from his arm as he turned all the rocks into dust, or into sand. He ends up going to a hospital as he wakes up with a bandage around his arm. He looks at his hand as nothing survived. Doctors say that due to what happened, the rock destroyed his hand to the point where they can't even surgically reattach it. Izuku is beyond pissed. He tries to reform his hand with sand as he can, but when he turns off the sand, it just falls off. He can't make a new hand. A few months go by, and Izuku just has to live with the fact that he's going to have a permanent sand hand. Until he remembers when he submitted his hero outfit, one of them will have a hook, a golden hook. As he realizes this could be useful, as he ends up asking them if they can swap it over to his other hand, as he changes some other things about his hero outfit, like how he wants to have small little glass containers, just so he can hold sand in it just in case some stuff happens and he needs to do stuff like summon sand for quick throwing attacks. But he mainly wants to do it for style points. Izuku as they get this and swap the hook to the other hand, not knowing why, but they do it in general. Now is the day of Izuku's starting to be start of being a hero. Izuku walks to UA after they allow him to be there. Sorry, he wasn't invited there. He's going there to join UA's hero course. He ends up tripping on a rock, and as he falls down, he turns part of his leg into sand to hold him up. As a girl behind him says, "Oh, sorry," as she ends up tripping into him. He looks at her as she's a brunette with some rosy cheeks. He ends up saying, "It's fine. I don't really care." As she ends up saying sorry again, but he says, it's all good." As she walked past him, he ends up reforming his body, but then someone else walks in front of him or to his side. It's Bakugo, and Bakugo says, "Huh, of course a wannabe loser like you would try and join the school I'm joining. Just remember, if you join, I'm gonna kill you." As Izuku looks at him and says, "Really now? I'd like to see you try." As Bakugo is about to start explosions, and Izuku is about to turn his hand into sand, but both of them realize it's not the time for this right now, as they both end up walking into UA. They end up into the room where President Mike describes the enemy types, the 1-pointers, 2, 3, and even 0-pointer. Ida ends up asking about the 0-pointer, and Izuku is sitting with his legs up, and he says, "Huh, okay, good to know some of that." As Izuku starts mumbling to himself, "Maybe if I do as Ida states, can he be quiet?" As Izuku hears this and is like, "No, can you, shut the fuck up? Can you, shut up or shut the fuck up, please? Thank you." As Ida is about to yell, but President Mike says, Hey, don't get feisty. It's not even your first day here." As Ida sits down, and Izuku says, "Does that kid have a stick up his ass or something?" "Whatever. Doesn't matter." As they all get ready, as Izuku seems to be in a weird outfit. He's in shorts and then a somewhat normal shirt. As he goes up in the front and sees the same girl, Ida ends up stopping and saying, "Don't bother her. She's probably planning," as Izuku cuts him off and says, "I'm going to the front because I want to go to the front. Don't assume shit," as he ends up walking to the front. President Mike appears and says, Hey, you all ready?" as the doors open. And Mike says, "There's no countdown to a real battle, so all of you get in there." As they all run in, as Izuku ends up speeding away and turning his body into sand. He ends up going past everyone, and even Ida. Ida's shocked about his speed. Izuku grabs some metal around him and uses throwing them around, and he grabs part of the ground with the only hand he has left, and erodes into sand, creating a sand veil around him, allowing him to create a shield. As he starts throwing sand left and right, destroying robots, he ends up using the sand to boost him up to the top of buildings and snipe them, throwing sand blades or even just destroying them. He saves some people, but some people he just doesn't care about. As Izuku's racked up at least 20 villain points and 15 hero points, so he has 30 right now. Izuku ends up spending a few more minutes getting now 30 villain points and 20 hero points, so he has 50. Izuku ends up seeing the 0-pointer and seeing how big he is. He knows he shouldn't be on this building. He ends up eroding part of the wall, sliding down it, and summons the sand veil around him again. He ends up trying to walk away, but then he hears a cry of help. It's the girl that bumped into him. He ends up trying to walk away, but then sees she's stuck and the 0-pointer is about to stomp on her. He ends up walking slowly, eroding the ground under his feet and in front of him. As the 0-pointer is about to step down, as he raises up one of his hands and yells, "Sand Tomb! killer move. As a huge wall of sand shoots out of the ground and around Ochako, knocking the 0-pointer down as Izuku jumps up, using the sand to put him further up in the air, as he grabs a little bit of sand left and summons a blade and slices its arm off. As Ochako is saved and Izuku used one of his moves, as he says, "I didn't think I had to use that one here." As Izuku walks to Ochako and helps her up. As he picks her up, he ends up putting his hand back in his pocket and ends up walking away. As now that the test is over, Izuku has now a total of 25 hero points and about still 30 villain points, so he's now at 55 points in general. The next day Izuku is just chilling around his house, just enjoying himself, as he doesn't really care what's going on. As Inko says if he wants to go to Mitsuki's house, as Izuku says, "Do you want to go, Mom?" And she says she really wants to go. And he says, "Okay, we'll go then." As his mom gets happy and says, "You're a good kid." And he says, "I'm not really that good." She says, "Thank you for being a good son." As he smiles. She ends up driving to Mitsuki's house, as she's just happy to be around her. Izuku sees Bakugo and just does not talk to him, not wanting to deal with him anymore. As Bakugo points to them going outside, as he states, "Listen, nerd, you better not be in my class. I swear to God, if you are, I'm not gonna lose it. Ever since you got that sand power, you've acted different and weird." As Izuku says, "Why should I listen to you?" As he says, "You better," as he starts lighting explosions in his hand. Izuku says, "How hot do your explosions get?" And he says, "Hot enough to know if I hit you 2 times in the same spot, you'll turn into glass." As Izuku smiles and says, "Really? I'd like to see you try it." As he touches some parts of the rocks around him with his legs and with his hand, and turns it into sand eroding him. He ends up turning them into squid-like tentacles with blades on them and says, "You know I'm better than you, and you just have to state it. But if you want to fight, then bring it on. I'm fine beating you in front of your parents' house." As they're both about to fight, but Mitsuki ends up yelling at them saying, "Stop destroying our decorative plants and rocks." And she hits both of them on the head, somehow being able to hurt Izuku, even though Izuku is still sand. He wonders if her glycerin quirk allows her to hit him. As he says, "Fine." She says for him to try and turn the rock back to normal, and he says, "I can't." And she says, "You two need to stop fighting with each other and be good friends." As Izuku yells, "We're not friends, we're acquaintances, and that's all we are." As Bakugo says, "That's the only thing I'll agree with him about." And she says, "Whatever, just don't fight." As Izuku says, "I wasn't trying to, it was just him." As Bakugo says, I said enough." Fine. As both try and stay away from each other the rest of the night. Izuku has a few more days, or maybe a week passes, before Izuku gets a letter in the mail. As All Might states that he did good. He did really good. He didn't get the top. He wasn't at the top 1, but he did really good and was in the top 5. As he says, Izuku is now in UA. A week later, Izuku ends up arriving on his first day to UA High, as he wonders why the door's so big. But he ends up thinking, it's probably people with giant quirks that need this. As he walks in and sees that everyone looks at him, Izuku just states loudly, "What you looking at?" As they all start going back to start talking to each other. As he walks in, he ends up seeing Ida and Bakugo yelling at each other. And Bakugo says what he does, he usually will say and says, "Do you gotta stick up your ass where you come from? 'Cause you're really annoying." as Ida yells at him, but ends up seeing Izuku and says, "Hello there. I would like to apologize for how I acted." As Izuku said when we first met. As Ida pulls out his hand, as Izuku says, "Can you do the other hand?" As Ida asks, why? As Izuku shows him that he doesn't have a hand on his other arm. Ida says, "Oh, I'm sorry," and ends up shaking hands with Izuku. Izuku walks to a random desk and sits down. Uraka walks in and sees him and says, "Oh, it's you." As Aizawa is in the room and says, "Quiet," as no one listens to him, as he yells, "Can you guys be quiet?" As everyone shuts up and doesn't talk. As he says, "Good. Took forever for you guys to shut up." As Izuku thinks in his mind, "I was the only one not talking." As he pulls out the gym uniforms and says, "Put these on. We're doing something real quick." As they all wonder what, as they all go outside into the field where the ball test is, he just throws it to Bakugo. "Here, you scored the highest on the test, so you throw it." As he says, "Really?" "Yes, and with your quirk." As Bakugo smiles, how does it matter how I throw this? "Use any way, just as long as you don't leave the circle." Bakugo smiles and throws the ball with an explosion, as he got normally what he got in the original. As everyone says this will be fun, as Izuku says, "Ugh, I thought UA would be cool, not boring as hell." As Aizawa says, "Do you all think this is a game?" As he says, "You know what? The person to score the lowest will be kicked out." As they all are shocked, saying they can't be kicked out on the first day. He says, "I'm allowed to do whatever I can with my own class, and that's what's gonna happen." And Izuku ends up thinking, "This guy's not serious. I can tell by his body language." Or there's another outcome. He is serious and but I can't figure it out. This is mighty interesting. I might have fun today. As he ends up cracking his neck. As Izuku ends up going next. As he says, "So, as long as I don't move the circle, right?" "Yes." My ability is sand manipulation. What happens if I just roll it onto the sand and use my powers to make it go farther? He says, "That would count as it hitting the ground. What if it's in the air?" "That's fine." Good. As Izuku slams his hand on the ground that is this parched ground, as it slowly dries up and erodes into sand. He ends up grabbing it and spinning into a tornado. He ends up winding up his arm and shoots it out, getting 4 times the length Bakugo did, shocking everyone. He says, "If everything's gonna be like this will be easy," as he laughs his ass off. As Aizawa says, what type of quirk do you have?" "Huh? Is it an emitter class transformation or mutation?" And he says, "What do you mean? It's an emitter." As Aizawa says, "Look, I tried canceling out your quirk, and from what I can see, it's no emitter." "Maybe then a transformation?" "No. It has to be some sort of mutation quirk. But it doesn't make sense. It acts like I won't get into this. I'm not doing that right now." As Izuku wonders why he went into that thing then. He's more confused. Everyone else ends up going in. Ochako ends up getting Infinity. As everyone is shot, and Izuku says, "Well, that's utter BS. Of course she'd win that one. Man, why is this one so good for her?" As the last one to go is Momo. As everyone wonders what her ability is, as she ends up creating a cannon as Izuku's mouth goes open, as he's like, "A fucking cannon?" As she ends up shooting the ball for longer than Izuku's. As he says, "Now that's just unfair. She made a cannon." As they do other events like the long distance running, Izuku does better than in a normal one due to him being able to move faster into sand form and ends up beating Bakugo by a good margin. The strength one Izuku does a little bit better at, but not by much. But stuff like the side to side movements, he turns his body into sand and repeatedly shakes his body as he gets a good score. Then for the jumps, he ends up turning his body into sand and flies over repeatedly, as he ends up getting affinity for this one due to him being able to float with the sand. As everything comes in, and it turns out that Mineta was the person who scored the lowest. And unlike in the original, due to Izuku being the one to change Eraserhead's mind, he ends up stating, "Minoru Mineta, you have been expelled." As Mineta is shocked and freaking out that how could he be expelled, as he's honestly sad, but Aizawa says, "Pack your things and leave. Go to the principal's office, he'll give you a slip, and then bye. And then say goodbye. Maybe you can join a different hero school." As Mineta is sad and has to leave crying, Izuku says, "That was another possibility. That was one of my possibilities. I'm shocked that the invisible girl beat him, though. Pretty sure that Mineta kid had a big lead. Well, he's not that physically strong, so I guess that's why she beat him." It doesn't matter, as Izuku doesn't even bother checking his score. He only looked for the last place. He ends up thinking in his mind, "From what I can tell, the kids in my class that most likely will be a threat to me if I'm to fight them like how I did with Bakugo or that Momo girl. That kid with ice. He reminds me of someone. His stare. And Bakugo. But I feel like there's someone I'm forgetting." As he tries to think about someone who could truly be a threat to him, but he says, "It's probably just my imagination. I shouldn't care too much." After Izuku's first day and Mineta's expulsion, Izuku returns home to see his mother. She asks how his first day was, and he says, "It could have been better." And she says, "Well, at least you're okay." As they both smile at each other as he goes to lay in his bed. He continues to think about who in his class still is a threat, because he can't get that out of his head. Bakugo is obviously one of them, but that kid with the ice quirk, he doesn't know about the fire. The kid with the ice quirk seems to be dangerous, but Izuku believes if he can absorb the ice before it hits him, he'll be able to be fine, absorbing the ice moisture. He then leaves his room and goes to tell his mother he's going to the beach real quick just to go relax and see the sunset. She says for him to be careful and that she doesn't want anything bad to happen to him. And she says he'll be fine, he doesn't gotta worry about a damn thing. She says, "Well, have a good time," as he goes to leave. Once he gets to the beach, he meets some kids from his middle school who are now in different high schools while he's in UA. He meets the two girls he talked to earlier as they ask if he got into UA, as he said he did and that he already completed the first day. They're shocked but they're also not so surprised due to him and Bakugo having the strength to do it. They ask if he would like to come with them to go to karaoke, as he states he doesn't want to do any of that right now. He's going to do his own thing. As he enjoys the sunset and the tranquility of the waves and how the sand feels. Once at least an hour passes, his mom texts him to come home so he can at least eat some dinner. He ends up leaving, and when he gets to the apartments where he lives, he sees a tree A weird looking tree, but a tree no less, as it grows apples on it. He grabs one and eats it, and nothing really happens. It was the same place he put the devil fruit when his mom buried it, and no, it's not growing other devil fruits, it's just a tree, weirdly shaped apple tree. He ends up walking inside his house and eats whatever food is left over. Now we'll start Izuku's second day in UA. Izuku's in class, and then all of a sudden, All Might bursts through the door, says, "I'm entering the room like a hero," as everyone comments about All Might and what outfit he's wearing, as Izuku is just wondering why he's doing any of this. And All Might says they'll be doing hero and villain training. And they all get to wear their hero outfits that they had. Everyone ends up leaving to go to the battleground where it's going to happen. Everyone's outfit's the same, except for Izuku's. Instead of basing it off of All Might, it's more of a pirate getup, but he has a golden hook on one arm, and it's exactly the same like crocodiles, like the exact same shape. As everyone wonders why he has a hook there on the part of his arm without anything. As Izuku says, "You're asking why I have a hook on the part where I have no hand?" As they all realize that they're stupid. As All Might says, they'll be picking teams to go against each other. And the teams end up becoming the same. Izuku's with Ochako and Bakugo's with Ida. They end up Ida and Bakugo end up going into the building to set up the bomb, while Izuku and Ochako try and set up a plan. Ochako asks if the deku has any plans/ideas, and he says, I have a few. Bakugo is most likely coming after me, and that will leave you time to escape when he attacks me. But I highly doubt he will. He's the type of person to rush head first and make sure no one leaves. But I do have one idea. As he tells Ochako his plan. She agrees and says it's a good plan and that they should do it. Finally, the buzzer comes out and they're able to go and leave. Izuku and Ochako end up walking up at least 2 floors before they hear Bakugo's yelling, or where Izuku is. Izuku pulls out one of his hands and says he has a little idea. As he touches the ground, turning it into sand, as he realizes he should probably try one of his new tricks. As he kicks off his nice shoes and starts walking, and part of the ground turns to sand while the other doesn't, creating traps. As Bakugo jumps at him, Izuku pushes Ochako out of the way as Bakugo flies past him and lands into a sand pit, crashing through the 2nd floor down to the 1st. Izuku and Ochako start running as Izuku turns more parts of the building into sand and shoots it at Bakugo to buy time. Bakugo is getting pissed off and chases after them. He ends up shooting an explosion which almost hits Ochako, but Deku protects her. Or Izuku. And what shocks everyone is the fact that Izuku's hand is turned into glass with one of these explosions. As Izuku says, "God damn it! I forgot about that." As Bakugo says, "What? That he can turn sand into glass?" And that Izuku says, "No, that you could do that." Izuku tells Ochako to start running as he'll deal with the whole Bakugo. As she runs, Bakugo tries to go after her, but Izuku hits him with a blast of sand. As Bakugo is thrown into the wall, almost shattering it. And Izuku says, "Listen, Bakugo, I could have ended any of our fights before they even began." As he shows, "You see this water bottle?" As he punctures a hole, a small one, and then sucks the moisture out of it. "Imagine me doing that, but to your arm." As he picks up Bakugo by the arm. Bakugo lets out an explosion, but Izuku kicks him away with his leg. And Izuku is a little taller in this story. I would say close to the size of the tallest kids in class, and he's because in the end of the story he'll be at least close to Crocodile's height. Bakugo ends up spitting up blood and says, fine, I guess I'll use this. As he shows his arm and pulls the trigger to his grenade gauntlet. All Might says not to use that or he'll kill Izuku. And Bakugo says, not if he dodges, as he lets it off. The explosion ends up shooting at him, but Izuku, quickly thinking, turns most of the ground into sand and throws the sand in front of him, protecting him with a shield. As it does stop the explosion, or majority of it. Bakugo wonders if that really beat Izuku, and he yells, come on, damn nerd. Is that really all you got? As Izuku says, no. As Bakugo gets grabbed by the neck and gets slammed to the wall. Izuku shows his hook and smacks Bakugo with the part that isn't hooked. But it's still a hunk of metal, so Bakugo gets blood shot out of his mouth and feels his jaw getting cracked. Izuku says, I don't want to deal with you right now, as he absorbs a little moisture from Bakugo's body. And Bakugo feels weak and passes out, as Izuku ends up turning his body into sand and shoots up the stairway, trying to find where Ida is. Ochako ends up meeting Ida and laughs due to Ida trying to become a villain. Ida ends up fighting her and gives her trouble until Izuku arrives. Ida states that Izuku can't beat him. As Izuku says, I just beat your friend down there. I'm pretty sure I can beat you. As he turns his hands into sand and shoots them at Ida. As Ida tries to run but then sees multiple as Izuku's throwing them repeatedly. And then Izuku touches the ground once, turning it all into sand and grabbing the bomb with his sand and catching Ochako. Ida ends up falling to the next floor below him and ends up hurting himself, but not too bad. All Might says the heroes have won. All Might then asks who were the MVP of that trial, as Momo states it's Izuku with hands down. He beat Bakugo, was able to beat Ida, and was able to capture the bomb and do minimal damage. But she says he had also other ideas, like maybe to stall Ida while Ochako disarmed the bomb. And Izuku says, it was faster for me to do that. Keeping him off would allow Ida to land hits on me or hits on Ochako. Immediately disrupting him from running allows me to stop the bomb and to save my partner. As Momo says, that is true, as All Might agrees with both of their arguments. The next battles go the same, and Izuku takes a big interest in Todoroki's battle. How Todoroki just instantly won by freezing the entire building around him. Izuku says that that kid is extremely powerful and that he may need to watch out if they ever do hero training and he has to go against him. Izuku ends up meeting with All Might as All Might states he wants to talk to Izuku alone. Izuku asks what All Might wanted to ask about as he says, listen, young man, I don't want to say that, but you need to be more careful with your classmates. You shattered Bakugo's jaw with that hook of yours. As Izuku says, oh, I thought I did more. Damn, I guess I'll hit him harder next time. As All Might says, that's not the point. Listen, from what I can see, you're a good person. But you can't act like everyone is below you. As Izuku says, that's real high and mighty of you. Listen, I lived my life at the bottom and had to work to the top, while others were born at the top. If I can show those assholes who had a better start than me that I am better than them, that's all I care about. What about being a hero then? Honestly, I only need to be a hero for the license and so I can do my own damn thing. Listen, I don't care what you think I did wrong. I'm doing my own thing. If you can't accept that, then that's your own damn fault. As Izuku leaves, a kid ends up passing him by that seems to have yellow hair, but he doesn't care. As he walks into the same room, Lemillion asks, "So you called me here, All Might?" As All Might says, "Yes." "How's One for All been treating you?" As Lemillion says, "He's doing good." As All Might says, "Good, that's good to know." But Lemillion then states, "Actually, I've been having weird dreams." As All Might asks, "What type?" "Well, I've been seeing random people, in shadows mainly. Then one that kind of looks like you but in a fiery state." As All Might says, "I've had that dream before, but not with a fiery person." As All Might says, it could be One for All. As Lemillion says, "You're probably right." As he says, "Well, at least your One for All is doing good for you." And he says, "Yeah, but it's hard to keep it down and not let my class know about it." That does seem like a hassle." As both of them continue their talk. Now we'll go over to what Izuku's doing. He ends up walking out of UA before two people stop him. Ida and Ochako. Ochako asks him why Bakugo calls him Deku. As Izuku states, "And that's what he used to call me as a kid. I was a late bloomer with a quirk." But Ochako says, "Really? That's bad. I thought you two were good. You two seem like friends or rivals." He says, "We are rivals, I just don't like him. Honestly, I wish he wasn't even here right now." As Ida says, "Well, they're gonna be next to each other for 3 whole years, so they gotta get used to it." Izuku says, I know. Ugh." As they ask where they're all going, they all realize they're going on the same train back home. So Ida says maybe they should try and become good friends. As Izuku says, "Okay, sure," in a nonchalant voice, as Ochako seems to be happy with this. They all end up talking, and Ochako and Ida end up finding out about Izuku's one and only weakness, water, or any liquid, saying that liquids can turn his body to solid, allowing people to hit him. That's why he states he was afraid to grab Bakugo anywhere but his arm, or but his head, saying that his arms were sweating more, saying that his sweat is like nitroglycerin, so he was trying to be careful around him. As they all say that his quirk seems pretty powerful but has a very major weakness. He states, "I can absorb moisture, but I have to be like stretching my arm out and grab someone while absorbing it. If I don't absorb it when I grab them, I can't do it." As I say, he still has a pretty cool power in general. Izuku does bring up that he only got the power after he ate a nasty ass fruit, saying when he bit into it, it tasted so horrid, and that he had to spit it out and that he just threw into the dirt and put in the ground. As he says, it probably was a rotten apple affected with someone's quirk. And they state that it had probably awakened his powers. He says, "That's pretty lame, though, don't you think? I ate a nasty ass fruit and then all of a sudden I gained powers because I hated it." He says that does sound a little boring. Izuku ends up finished talking with them as he leaves to go home. His mother cooks him up food as he eats it with her. She isn't fat in this universe and is still her normal size due to Izuku having a quirk and being able to stand up for himself and her not having the stress. He didn't worry about him. Izuku gets a text from his father saying he should be home next month, as Izuku's happy that he gets to see his dad finally. A few days later, Izuku and his class end up going to the USJ for training. They end up all getting onto the bus as they all talk about who could be a good hero. Tsuyu states Bakugo probably won't be so popular due to his anger issues, and Izuku possibly could be popular, but how brutal he was with Bakugo when he smacked him with the metal hook could be seen as scary. As Izuku states, he doesn't care. As they all end up walking into the USJ, and Izuku says he has a bad feeling about this. As they end up meeting with 13 and they walk in, as they're all talking, Izuku points out, so is there always supposed to be like a black and purplish misty portal in the middle? As Aizawa says, a what? As they all look and see a portal. As villains end up walking out, everyone says, really? We got villains for this as well? As Aizawa says, 13, protect the kids. But Izuku is shown smiling at this, saying, this could be fun. As Aizawa says, don't fight, Izuku. I'm gonna handle this. Izuku ends up not listening and touches the ground, turning it into sand. Oh, the stairs. He states, you might want to stay up here, Aizawa. You can't get up nor down. As Izuku jumps off, leaving the class. As Aizawa says, damn that boy, as he jumps in after him as they both slide down. Izuku states, this could be fun. As he starts shooting sand waves at them, knocking the villains down, until he's met with a purple mist villain who puts him into or teleports him back to the rest of his class. Izuku wonders, what the hell? As then he states, don't worry, no one's here is leaving alive, so pray to your gods. As part of the class gets teleported, Izuku gets teleported with one other person. As Izuku realizes he's falling, he looks down and sees water. Izuku then sees a boat and shoots out of his arm with sand and misses the boat and falls into the water. He ends up clambering up and starts drowning as he loses all his strength and sinks. The villains say, wow, a hero kid that can't swim? That's pathetic. As Tsuyu ends up hitting the villain and kicking him, she ends up using her tongue, wraps him, and then gets him onto the boat. Izuku ends up spinning out water as she states what happened. He states, my power doesn't allow me to swim. I can't swim. She wonders, really? Yeah. I can't swim. My power. And she asks if he can use his abilities. He says, I need to dry off first. I can't use my powers without being dry. She ends up finding a towel on the boat and ends up drying him off. As he states, as he states that they need to get to dry land, as with it he can use a move. As she says, well, they can't go with these villains around them. As he states, how long can you jump? What? I said, how long can you jump? As she states, she can probably jump half of the way there. As he says, good. We'll land at least 3 feet from the shore if I jump, and then you jump off me, holding me. As he tells her to hold on, as he spins the sand around his legs, as he shoots out, gliding across, before he's hit by a villain's cord that allows him to manipulate water. Izuku's hit and falls, but Tsuyu kicks off of him and flies, using her tongue to swing him with her. They both land onto the shore as Izuku hits the ground. He coughs up blood, but says these villains had a mistake fighting him because he's about to make them pay. As he turns the ground into sand, he grabs with his hook and shoots a huge blade of sand at the villains. And I wonder what's going on, but then Izuku ends up absorbing the water or the huge ocean absorbing the moisture from the water, or the water in general. He ends up making them fall with the boat landing as the villains are now knocked out. He states, that took a lot of energy for me to absorb that much moisture. As some villains see Izuku, as Izuku sees his teacher Aizawa fighting, he states that he'll get Sue out of here, and then he's going to continue to fight these villains. As he shoots sand and grabs Sue and starts speeding around, shooting blades of sand, moving as fast as he can. He ends up putting Sue back where she is and ends up shooting right back down, going as fast as he can. Aizawa ends up getting hit by the Nomu once and is on the ground. The Nomu grabs Aizawa's arm and is about to break it before the Nomu collapses to the ground dead. Shigaraki wonders what happened, as Izuku states, I absorbed the moisture. The brain is mostly water, you know, so I absorbed all the moisture in it. Also absorbed the moisture in his body. As he doesn't notice the Nomu regenerating. As the Nomu slams his hand into Izuku, crushing his head. But when the Nomu removes his arm, Izuku's head reforms as Izuku's hook hand stabs the Nomu's brain as he destroys it completely with sand. As he states, you villains really gotta understand who you're going up against, 'cause I ain't no kid. As he ends up smiling. Now prepare for your worst nightmare. As he grabs the ground and starts manipulating it. The rest of the class is dealing with Korogiri until Korogiri realizes that Shigaraki's in grave danger. He ends up teleporting Shigaraki away from Izuku's attacks and states it's best if they leave and not deal with this until they're stronger, as Korogiri ends up leaving. As I always say, from a few days of therapy and a few weeks of being in the hospital, as there are only a few villains remaining, as Izuku deals with them by using his sand tornado to throw them around. He ends up trying to find out where some of his classmates are. He sees some on the mountain range and speeds off towards them. During Denki, Jiro's, and Momo's fight with the villains, one comes out with an electrocution ability. Izuku ends up appearing and states, oh, a guy with an electric power. Neat. As he states, who are you, kid? As he states, he's a part of their class and to let Denki go, or else he's gonna have a little bit of pain. As the villain states, really, kid, you think I'm afraid of you? As he drops Denki and tries shocking Izuku, but as soon as he shoots his arm at Izuku, a hole appears in Izuku's body, and then completely wraps around the villain's hand. The villain gets grabbed by Izuku as his skull mass is crushed as he starts screaming in pain and agony. Izuku ends up hitting the villain with the blunt end of his hook in the chest, cracking at least a few of the villain's ribs and knocking the air out of him. Izuku summons some sand from his arm and slams it into his head, knocking him out completely. They end up knocking out the villains and end up leaving, as they meet All Might and the police are called to arrest all these villains. Tsukauchi asks them all the same questions he did in the original story and some new ones. As he asks what the hell that weird bird-like creature was, as they say they don't know. It's probably a villain. As they're all left to leave, and but Izuku's classmates state how cool Izuku was fighting those villains, saying that he's by far the strongest in the class. Izuku asks who was teleported as he sees a good chunk were. He then asks where all of them were. Yojiro says, I was alone in the burning area. Was it fun? As then he asks Toru and Aoyama. As Aoyama says, "It's a secret." As Toru stays, she was over with Todoroki. As Todoroki thinks, "I didn't see her. Where the hell was she? She could have been hurt badly." As he doesn't bring it up, but he's more confused now. And that's what I'll end the story for today. This will be a new series, and it's not going to be as long as this. Every episode will be probably a different length depending on how I feel. But like, subscribe, comment, and thanks for watching. Have a good day.